Yeah, whenever I came in, it was one of those, okay,
Yes, you can. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's just right at 6 o'clock, and don't want to spend too much overtime to keep you all from your evening. And my name is Clay Marcuson, and I'm a retired registered nurse, and I'm a member of Ward Squared, which is a Metro Organization for Racial and Economic Equity. I'm also on with the group, the Kansas City Regional Missouri Medicaid Expansion Coalition, which has been working very hard for several years on Medicaid expansion. We have several people that are on that coalition here this evening, and I appreciate them, and I especially appreciate all of you being here. It's so important, as you all know, and we'll talk more about it, and I'm certainly so glad to have our panelists here with us tonight. Um, we, there is a sign-in sheet going around, so make sure you sign up, please, so we can stay in touch with you and with resources and on our next steps. Um, Joining me tonight is doing the introductions and kind of the management, if you will, of tonight is Ms. Rebecca Gorley, and she's with the Missouri Medicaid Coalition. And appreciate you being here, Rebecca. And our panelists, as I mentioned, I'll introduce them formally, but we'll have some legislative input, health provider input, which is so important. There's a pastor here tonight, and so we'll have good input from them, but also from you. And it's important to hear from people attending and receive your input so then we can turn around and pass it on to others that are not in the room tonight. And that is so important. The purpose of our gathering tonight is to highlight why this issue matters for Eastern Jackson County and show the local need for Medicaid expansion. There are over 5,000 residents of Eastern Jackson County who would qualify, be eligible for Medicaid expansion. We want to demonstrate the broad and diverse support for Medicaid expansion in Eastern Jackson County. Now, maybe some people think there isn't a diverse population in Eastern Jackson County, or that there's not a need. I know from one Senator Krause, I went to a public meeting that he was presenting along with other legislators, and he said then that the recipients in Eastern Jackson County are not in favor of Missouri Medicaid expansion. So, which is a reason that is an important reason that we are here tonight to maybe turn his mind around, and there's ways of reaching out to do that. We want to demonstrate, we want to contribute the statewide momentum of locally organized events that highlight in-district demand for legislators to work on a Missouri solution to expand Medicaid. As you all know, back to Senator Krause for just 1 minute, you may know, you probably know that he will be running for Secretary of State. So if it is shown, if he receives a lot of input that Medicaid expansion is important, maybe that will be enough. Maybe we'll at this time, we need to just mention, and hopefully everybody got one of these when they came in. If not, we have some more. Raise your hand around. Because what we need to ask first is, does everybody know what Medicaid expansion means? could somebody give me their definition of what Medicaid expansion, what is Medicaid expansion in the state of Missouri? Yes, sir, Donnie.
Okay. Medicaid, there is a gap between the people that qualify for Medicaid at the current time and those that make enough to be able to obtain insurance through the Affordable Care Act. So it's that gap between the two. And Medicaid expansion is to cover that.
Yeah.
It would be a bill and funds to cover that gap that currently exists.
Thank you, Donald. And so there is that gap. Is there anybody else that wanted to define more about the gap?
Well, gap includes those people that are not covered, which is why it's called gap. But anybody, every free, which is the mother of 2 children, can only make a year $3,000 some dollars, which is like $270 a month. Which, yes, you are shocked, and it is not doable. People cannot manage a family, their transportation, and manage children on that kind of money. So it's 19% of poverty and something 35% is that huge gap that Missouri chose not to. Other states, 26 other states decided to do it. Their states are flourishing, providers are growing, and they will be taking away funds.
Thank you both. Currently, Missouri makes it harder than almost any other state to qualify for Medicaid. As Alice was saying, a mother with 2 children who earns more than $3,504 annually is not eligible for assistance due to recent cuts. Medicaid expansion expands eligibility for Medicaid to anyone who earns less than 138% of the federal poverty level of $2,195 per month for 3 people. We have the number that is promoted a lot. We have 300,000 people in the state of Missouri who would qualify, providing access that would qualify for Medicaid. So this time, I want to introduce our panelists. And the way this will go is that each of our guest panelists will have 5 minutes, and they'll each talk about their individual parts of and what they do and how that fits in and how they are seeing Medicaid expansion. I think that's very important. So first, Jane England, who's on the far end, is a registered nurse and an accredited case manager. And Pastor Brad Gray with All Saints Lutheran Church, and Lee McNew is legislative director of the American Postal Workers Union 67, correctly? Thanks. And Lauren Moyer is clinical director of Rediscovery. So first, and I'll try not to be too rude, but I kind of waited you at 5 minutes, so we'll just keep it in time. So Jane, would you start, please?
Okay.
I don't know. Is it on? Yeah, probably. Just so everybody, make sure everybody.
Okay, sorry. I'm a nurse. I work at Children's Mercy Hospital. I am a case manager. But I'm here as a person, as an individual, not representing Children's Mercy. I work with a lot of kids who have complex medical issues, and they may have asthma, cancer, arthritis, diabetes. And my passion in being here is because when these children turn 19, they're dropped and they don't have health care. they can have diabetes and go into what's called diabetic ketoacidosis, end up in the ICU, lose vision, lose kidney function, lose arms and legs, and then they'll get approved for Medicaid. We are going to pay either way. We need to maintain the health of our young people. I also come here as a mom and as just a caring citizen. I have a son who has autism, which is a social and sensory issue. And you know how when you're just minding your own business, living your life, and your kid turns your life upside down. My son met a girl online, Daisy, who's not here tonight. I'm telling her story. And he told me, Mom, I've invited her to live with us. Well, Daisy moved to Missouri. She's 20 years old. She had no health insurance. She had lost her Medicaid in California when her father became disabled. Or she lost her insurance when her dad became disabled. I didn't know that Daisy had rheumatoid arthritis. She was not getting any health care for several years, and then finally her pain was such that we had to get her into scope. They referred her to Truman. It took a year and a half to get to a specialist. She finally got to a specialist, found out she had lupus. She has been receiving care at Truman Medical Center, thank you, Jackson County, and just this month found out, due to the fact that we did not pass the gap, the Medicaid gap, Truman is losing federal funding. Daisy is no longer eligible for the discount, and so she's leaving. She's moving back to California, where they did pass Medicaid expansion. My son with autism, this is his girlfriend. He's losing his girlfriend, and he's devastated. So this is touching me personally. Another way it's touched me is Daisy had an episode of acute infection in her gallbladder. And I had to, as a nurse, I had never had to think twice about taking my son to the ER, but I held her off a day thinking we could go to urgent care. And she ended up in horrible pain that night. She had to be admitted to the hospital on IV for several days because we delayed care because she didn't have insurance. I think we need to pass the gap, close the gap, pass Medicaid expansion. We're the only country in the developed world that doesn't provide health care for our people. No one should have to claim bankruptcy to get health care. It's just inhumane.
Couple more minutes. Jake, would you mind explaining the trip that Dixie made to Jefferson?
Oh, okay. So on February 4th, we went to Jefferson City, my son and Daisy and I, along with the North Square group, and met with Senator Krause. He was less than receptive to the message. He's a veteran, and there's going to be, I think, a bill put before Congress and the Senate for veterans who to get some Medicaid services. We were met with such nonchalance, disinterest. It was very educational, it was very disgusting. We met with a representative from Excelsior Springs, TJ Berry, who, one of the ladies in our group was talking about her sister who could not get health care and had lung chest problems. They diagnosed her with stage 3 lung cancer. And she told that story, and he looked at her and said, end of life, now that's expensive. That's really expensive. And this has become more of a passion to me because of that. I don't know how anybody can consider health care a luxury.
Thank you, Jane. Lee,
I think I can live without that. Hello, everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for allowing me to come out and speak on such an important topic. I am the legislative director for the American Postal Workers Union in the state of Missouri. That being said, I'm going to cut you guys a break. I'm not going to sit up here and talk about legislation. Instead, I'm going to introduce myself real quick and tell you why I really am in this spot. Real simple, I'm local. Grew up in Raytown, went to Raytown schools, been Kansas City all my life. I live in Lee Summit, right around the corner. I've had many meetings with Will Kraus, and I know what you're talking about. First time I got out of the local area was I joined the military. Did 6 years in the Navy, loved it. Some very fine healthcare. That's the type of healthcare everyone should be afforded. Okay. Only reason I got out of the Navy was because I wanted to start a family, and I wanted to be with family because family is important. So even though I did love the Navy, I went ahead and got out of the Navy, started working at the Postal Service. Lucked out, got a job, good paying, good benefits. I walked right into exceptional benefits again. Very blessed. Everything was going great. Started my family. January of 2012. My father got a call late at night from my mother. Had some issues. We took him to the hospital. Come to find out, he had bleeding in his brain. And all the doctors looked at it. They admitted him. They tried to get the swelling to go down. Family was torn because we were given, well, we can do this, we can do this. But this option is going to cost so much that my mother basically was going to have to come live with one of the kids, which would have been no problem. Any one of her children would have took her in, not a problem. But it's one of those things that it was not a, if we do this, he will be guaranteed to live. It was a, well, this is your shot. And my family was split. It really did tear at our family because we had part of the family that no matter the cost, we wanted to save my father. And we had part of the family that, and this was included in how my father brought us up. He spent his whole life working for his money. He lived within his means, and he didn't want it all spent on him. He wanted it to provide for his family. Okay, so there was a tear, and the reason that tear was there was because of insurance, because of coverage. Okay, the very coverage that we're talking about today is what set parts of my family almost against each other in a crisis. We've recovered now, but it was horrible. And we had to make some choices, right or wrong. My father didn't, he lasted about 5 months. It was a rough 5 months for him. He was a very robust man. And that 5 months, he was not. He suffered quite a bit. But with that, I don't want any other family to end up having to go through this. I want that safety net for everybody. Like Jane was talking about with the veterans. They have a safety net. They earn that safety net. I've got nothing against veterans. But I think everyone should have that basic safety net. And when we do get down to the legislation, I'm not going to go into the details, but when we do go into the legislation, the money's there, okay? When we look at what we spend our money on in legislation, this is not some high, high dream out there. This it's achievable. The money is there, and we cannot continue to go without the coverage that we have.
Would you lead? Pastor Brad, please.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and of course, I think there's probably so many more qualified except for to speak to this issue, but I think the common ground that I have is that first and foremost, I'm human, and to state the obvious, and to be human is to suffer. That's the first pillar of truth that Buddhists understand what it is to be alive. And as the story is already heard this evening, I grew up as the last baby of 4 children. My father died and I left my mother with 4 children. So, and this is 1959, so a safety nets for her. She got lost the house. I did not see a dentist until I was in college many years later. And again, it was on my mother's plan. So personal. Another personal item came to my brother, who was 5 years older than me, who did go bankrupt with medical bills, covered without insurance. This is many years ago, 27 years ago. But still, the number one cause of bankruptcy in America is bankrupt with medical bills today. I have a loved one. I was dating a significant other, my other son. She has bipolar and personality disorder. She falls into that gap you're talking about, making too much money. She can't qualify for insurance, but she doesn't make enough to afford the Affordable Care Act. And so she's suicidal, and the mother tries to help her with her medications. The mother was a Florida single parent, so it's all she can do to provide for expensive medications. On a personal note, I've been very, very fortunate like you. Once I got into seminary, that USDA had coverage for me, my wife, and my brand new baby. I had 3 children, all of them gone. But it just always struck me just why, in the richest country in the world that we've ever seen, that we privilege some and put away others as if we're human trash. And I find it obscene, incomprehensible, and obviously everywhere a piece of plastic gets you away. It's immoral and unethical. And any decent concept of God, of life, and humanity. I suffer from tremors and torn arteries and blood thinner. And 6 years of different parts of the money taken out. And through the whole thing, we had quite a bit of money out of pocket. But you know what? Here I am. I'm one of the privileged. It doesn't go by me. And it makes me ill to see people in my parish, people in my family, simply because they can't afford it, cannot have health care. It's an atrocity what's going on. 45,000 people every year die in this country. This is after the ACA, not having health care. If this were a war, the people would stand up, I am convinced, on both sides of the aisle, wherever they see themselves politically, religiously, and demand and honestly. I'm old enough to remember Vietnam, I remember those protests. People wouldn't put up with it, and yet this is exactly what's going on in our country. It's happening in our homes, in our work, in our churches, in our synagogues, in all walks of life. And I'm Maslow Krauss, and I prayed really hard to view him as a child of God, which he is. I believe every human being is a child of God. He's a child of God, but he's terribly understood. and you've been privileged. The question was asked him to meeting we had, is have you ever been without health insurance? You know what his answer was? Of course not. So he hasn't had the experience, and I think experience goes a long, long way to determining this whole question.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, music is different. I can take that. Here,
Appreciate you being here.
yes. I want to take it. It's,
Say,
So, thank you for the introduction. Again, my name is Lauren Moyer, and I'm the clinical director at Rediscover. Does anyone know about Rediscover? You want to just raise your hands? Okay, so not a lot. So just to kind of give you an overview of what Rediscover is. Rediscover is here actually in Lee Summit. We have locations in South Kansas City, and we also have locations in the Midtown area. So we're very well represented in Eastern Jackson. Eastern Jackson County. We are a mental health and substance abuse agency. So we serve an array of individuals from very young to, 95. And we serve people that have very chronic issues, with severe mental illness like schizophrenia or maybe depression. We service individuals that are struggling with substance use. And then we serve individuals just like you and I who might have just an acute issue, grief, loss, stress at work, just need some coping skills and guidance. So we see an array of individuals. We served in 2013 a little over 8,000 individuals. For the year of 2014, we saw an exponential growth where we served over 10,000 individuals. In 2013, we received about 10,000 calls from people just, wanting to know more about our services or trying to access our services, locate community resources. In 2014, that rose to 3,500 additional calls. So we had 13,500 calls in 2014. So I think just as a system, we can see just a tremendous amount of growth in the people that are trying to access our services and that are struggling. Because of that growth and the huge increase that we've had at our front door, and we see about 20 to 30% of our individuals we serve that are uninsured. We try to help those that we can to get on Medicaid, even though it's a very lengthy process, as most of you know. An individual who is trying to get on disabled Medicaid, the law says 90 days. We're not seeing it any sooner than about 6 months. So very, very slow process for our folks that are eligible for Medicaid as the way that it stands now. So because of this huge influx and the amount of people that we serve, we've kind of reached a tipping point, honestly, in services. We have utilized up our own funds so much that we were the agency that accepted anyone, regardless of payer source. And now we've reached a point where we've kind of had to designate based on vulnerability. So we want to still take the most vulnerable individuals. And so then that is kind of in that Medicaid gap for those folks that aren't eligible for Medicaid. Our options are somewhat minimal. We have options, for those who are uninsured to be on a sliding fee scale. But, you guys know as well as I do, you can't buy your own groceries, let alone afford a $50 copay to see a therapist. So, it's a daily struggle. And, we have to not necessarily turn people away and try to give everybody something, or link them with services in the community that we can find that will, be supportive, whether that's their local church, a support group that might be free, a handout that says here's some coping skills. But those individuals that kind of fall through that gap are really kind of at a loss. And they're the ones that are going to become those most vulnerable individuals, because they're going to be accessing our community resources such as the hospital emergency room that are much more costly
than if they could have just come in our front door and received the outpatient care that they needed. So, for instance, Joan resembles a multitude of individuals walking through our front door. You know, in 2013 and before, Joan could have come through our services and not had to pay anything and got the outpatient services that she needed and been able to retain that, you know, part-time job that she was at, where she was almost full-time, where she could almost get the insurance and almost be able to, you know, make ends meet, but she needed that medication to kind of help that anxiety that she was struggling with. So we were able to do that before in years past. But nowadays, the Jones coming through the front door, they don't get that luxury. So they're not going to be able to maintain that part-time job. They're not going to be able to get on the medication that they need. And it's going to set them back. And they're going to be much more costly to our services and to our system. And so that's the daily struggle that we see, especially now.
We've heard a lot from our four panelists, ranging from the economic issues that go along with Medicaid. I mean, there's so many issues to address when you're talking about Missouri Medicaid expansion and the need for it. And we've heard so much. We talk about the economic issues, the moral issues, that people gave examples of people within their own families, people that they're working with, people coming through the doors, and then the lack of the decline, the decrease in services that are available. So it's there's so many reasons, and what we have time for now is some questions from you, comments from you, for our panelists, and so I would like to have a question from you. Yes, ma'am.
I have worked ever since the Affordable Care Act was trying to be implemented and so forth, and I've made more phone calls than I want to think about. And I've followed this and been supportive of this effort from day one. My question is, and I don't even know if anyone can answer it, are we any closer with votes in the Missouri State House? Are we closer? And I'm hoping you're going to say, hey, we've got 2 people that were not on before and they're coming on. I wanted to hear some hope with it, because I totally feel like this is a moral, ethical necessity. And to let people be ill or pass away or become bankrupt because we deny them medical coverage. If you want to talk, I don't talk about sin, it's just not in my vocabulary, but to me, that would be a sin. I mean, you're saying to people, we don't care about you. And to me, every religion that has any kind of moral center, that's not the way we're supposed to be behaving. So do we have any souls over?
I can tell you, just having talked to the director of the Department of Behavioral Health just last week, that for this year it doesn't look good. But I mean, there still is hope. There's still a lot of conversation. There's more people that are on board with it, specifically in this kind of region. They're trying to reach out more to the rural areas. And I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of the rural area, like hospitals, have been impacted where they've just been closed completely. And so
Yes.
They are trying to reach out to those specific representatives a little bit more. I do know, as far as the behavioral health aspect, we have tried to advocate to at least get a specialized bill in place for Medicaid expansion. That is still, we're still holding out hope for that, in the respect that it would expand Medicaid for certain specialized populations. So individuals who are those young adults experiencing their first psychotic issues, so they might have had their first psychotic break, or their first severe issue, or individuals who are using IV drugs, There was one other, I don't want to speak out of turn. So there are advocates for that piece of legislation.
On the political front, what we have is it really is it comes down to a lot of party line issues. It is fought very heavily on party lines. With that, though, we do get to cite some Republican states that have the expansion and that are doing very well. And we are fighting misinformation and a lack of education on what we're actually trying to achieve. And I can give you this research. The more educated that the voters become, and the more they see how this actually impacts, we do win over people, okay? And if we win over people, we will end up winning over the legislature, okay? It's not a fast process, but we are winning over people. People are learning.
Thank you. Yes.
I have a question on that note. I do enrollment for health insurance, so through the ACA, and then also Medicaid, Medicare, for my own personal reasons. So I see it every day. Do you guys have any suggestions about a way to let people advocate for themselves or what they can do to get this information? Whoever, we've are told to contact the governor or do this. Is there anything else that can be done that's been shown to help so we can continue to let people's voices be heard? I think we're constantly doing educating as to why people are calling because they don't understand what they're trying to enroll, they get a desire to weekend, they don't understand they can't get help. So just, having that education piece, but building in that advocacy.
I think they need to contact their representatives or senators. And if, do they know who they are? I mean, maybe they even need the basics of, just where you go on the internet or the library or whatever to find out who the person to contact is. None of us up here are people without insurance. It's hard to get those people to talk. My son's girlfriend did talk until now she's lost the true waiver. It's hard for people to advocate for themselves because when you don't have insurance, the healthcare industry, the world, you feel like they're looking down on you. So it is hard to come out and speak up.
I would say sharing those personal stories through email. I mean, I know I can speak on the Starter's behalf. We constantly send the stories of our individual clients and what that looks like for them. We recently put a video together and put it on GCT just about the gap in coverage. So, I mean, I think those little things help and the more that they replicate to more people. I mean, that's all we can do,
I really think you have two different types of education we have to do. One is the general to get the apathy away, to get the I'm not involved away. And with that, we've had rallies. The rallies are great. We get some press coverage. We have it known. And people that do want to look into it, they know that there is an issue. They know that there's somebody out there fighting for something that might be able to help. The other one, that's your hard numbers. That's the one where everybody's eyes gloss over it. And that's where we actually need to contact the representative. We actually need to get down and have the numbers. And with that, like I said, it's almost you have to go here to get to because if we actually sit down and look at other states that have done it, like I've already said, it's highly successful. But in order to get there, we have to fight past misinformation and a fear of change.
Oh, yes, please.
I think these kinds of meetings here are very, very important. In the breadth of history, these kinds of social social changes always happen at the grassroots, and they take a lot of time. I'm very much a baby boomer, and I want it yesterday. So I have to keep reminding myself that this is the long view. This is the big picture. I may not benefit, my children probably won't benefit, but maybe grandchildren might, and their children. That's what we're looking at. Very much in the same way that African Americans in this country, since Reconstruction after the Civil War, well over 100 years, and I would say even up to the present moment, still fighting the fight of integrity, of fairness, equality. So this is not something where we just show up and make our voice heard, pull the lever on the voting machine, everything's done. This is going to be a long, hard battle because, let's face it, this is about money. This is all about money. And America is the richest country in the world. The problem is it's in 1%'s hands. And they're not satisfied with it. They want it all. They want Social Security, they want Medicare, Medicaid, they want it all. So, in my opinion, I think it's going to take more suffering. And I hate to say that. Because suffering seems to be that common ground where people look at each other through their own suffering and realize that their suffering is the suffering of their brother and sister. Right? We all share that. And at that point, I think you get some synergy, you get some inertia, you get some movement. These kinds of meetings are crucial, absolutely crucial. And you've heard the old pebble in the lake metaphor. I won't bore you with that, but that's really what it is. Sooner or later, it will be a tsunami. And God help the 1%. Because I don't condone violence, but it could go there. Because that's how bad it's getting. And by the way, since the ACA was, I don't mean to talk so much here, but the private insurance companies and pharma have made more money than they ever made before. It was the best thing that ever happened to them. And, I voted to have universal health care. That was why I voted the way I did. Unfortunately, there was a compromise, very much like when compromised with banking institutions and repealing Glass-Steagall. Big mistake. And by the way, speaking of connecting the dots, my brother lost his home because of the bankruptcy. They could not get the kind of loan with a fixed rate. They had a balloon. The housing thing went up. So one event, many years later, they lost their house. So as you were saying earlier, this affects all of us. We're in this together.
Thank you. In just a minute, Rebecca will come up and again, it is from the grassroots level, and she'll speak about where we go from here with that. But another thing you said, a couple things that you said is, we cannot, just come to a meeting and let it go at that. And Rebecca will be talking about that. Where do we go from here? And it needs to be done from the grassroots level. And there's one other important thing that just escaped. Maybe. Did anybody? Yes.
I just wanted to tag on to what Gene and some of the other panels said, that where are we now? Or how close are we? I'm not sure how close we are right now. It's not seeming good. But before the end of session on May 16th, is that correct? That's the end of session. But we don't know. There's a lot of horse trading that goes on right now and compromises that happen. And so certainly it's important to put pressure. And I just wanted to comment that I went to Jefferson City to play in February and was able to talk to Ryan Silvey. Ryan Silvey happens to be my senator, and if you've seen his name in the news, he is a Republican senator that's probably proposed more bills for Medicaid expansion than any other senator in the state of Missouri. So it is a bipartisan effort. There are many Republicans who are interested in expansion. And he told me personally that he believes in February that he had enough votes to pass expansion if it could ever get to the floor. And so this is an important thing to note because there is the right to filibuster in the Senate in the Senate House, and there are senators who are threatening to filibuster. And so what he said is, please tell your constituents who are for Medicaid expansion to put pressure on our Senate and our representative leaders. And that is Tom Dempsey, and that's Deal, and call the 1-800 number. All you have to do is get on the website and it pops up. Call them, leave a message, say that you want Medicaid expansion, put pressure on them just to have a discussion. That's all he wants, is to have a discussion, because he cannot get them. They have the ability as a leader to get it for there to be a discussion on the floor. And if there was a discussion, there would be a chance of, if there was a vote, there would be a chance of expansion. There's just a few senators and representatives who are preventing Medicaid expansion from going through. And certainly I know Will Cross is against it too. So if you're in his district, I really encourage you to call him too, please. Call and ask your neighbors to call.
Does anybody else have a quick question or comment? Yes.
Actually, around the economics, actually accepting the federal funds for taxpayers, and it would actually make economic sense in that the medical industry would actually be able to create jobs, and also you would have people that need the coverage to be cared for so that they could be productive. It makes economic sense. How does Senator Cross respond to those arguments? Or have you all presented?
Not well.
We heard statements, they want the medical bills to be they want it to be clear, that they have plans, that they would like passed, but they don't tell you. Plans are, they don't have a plan.
And whatever is being introduced, either at the federal or the state level, is far inferior to what we already have, which is not great right now. I mean, I'm looking at all of those things that, the proposal of what we can do, so inferior to what we have now, which, again, is not where we need to be.
As if they don't care that at this point, we've already lost millions of dollars because this is not retroactive. It will pick up wherever year they decide to implement it, and whatever they didn't implement, that money is gone. And we are taxpayers too. We pay taxes to the federal government and to the state, but only the states that implement this program are getting the money.
I don't know what is gonna happen now that Truman has lost millions and millions, if not billions of dollars of federal money because we didn't pass Medicaid expansion. And there's gonna be, we talk about pain, suffering. As a nurse, I've worked at Independence Regional, MCI, St. Luke's, Children's Mercy. We send everyone that didn't have insurance, we would send them to Truman because they could get services there. Where are all these people?
The emergency rooms and the medical bill, the medical costs are insured. Those of us who are insured, our premiums will go sky high.
But then they can get into the emergency room, no problem, but they can't follow it.
No, because they can't get follow-up. I mean, going into the emergency room is a one-time shot. It doesn't mean that you can get follow-up.
I do have one question. What is the legislature's explanation for these rural hospitals being closed? Do they have an explanation for that?
They don't offer that up and we never ask. So,
They're suffering the same thing that they're suffering. They were just much smaller entities.
Oh, I understand why, I'm just saying,
Oh,
what is their reasoning, you know, what are they saying as to why these hospitals or smaller clinics in rural areas, as they close, what is their explanation for it?
One of the senators that we spoke with, he said that they weren't managed. I mean, they have a lot of this.
I have heard that. I have heard some poor management. Line, I have heard that.
And a lot of the hospitals in the rural communities, I mean, I grew up on a farm. They don't have insurance, they have to buy it themselves.
Thank you. I want to introduce Rebecca Orley here. Talking about
I get the best job in the whole house, right? Like, what are we gonna do? Does anyone have any good answers? Wait, do I have any myself? I am really grateful to be here. This is my first time in Lee's Summit. I help out with the Medicaid Coalition. What I've heard from voices on the panel and what I've heard from residents here in this room is a lot of concern and a lot of tension around the legislative inaction on Medicaid expansion. We know that people die every day. We have a loved one, a neighbor. We've seen our hospitals close. Just a couple weeks ago, Barnes Jewish bailed out yet another hospital. They bailed out one in Farmington, and then they recently bailed out a psychiatric hospital in St. Louis. So we're here tonight, and each of us are here for the reason we are. And I think what we have to ask ourselves in moving forward is what does this night mean to us, and what are we going to do with that energy? Can I just get a show of hands of folks, anyone who's written a letter to the editor? Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Okay, great. Did it get published? No? Yours did, Paula. In the Kansas City Star?
No, my got published in the Smithville newspaper.
Okay, Smithville. So there are a lot of things that we can do, and I think that is really important to remember in moving forward. On the sheet here, it's a half sheet of paper. I just want to draw your attention. One way to duplicate our efforts is to write a letter to the editor. And especially if you see an article in the paper that says, you know, if Senator Krause, he has a column, or you see an article about Medicaid expansion, you can use that as an opportunity to respond and share your own experience and your own opinion about how that issue impacts you or your family or things in your workplace, right? And so Alice, who's the CCO organizer, she, I know, would be very happy to work with you, as well as myself, on getting a letter written and submitted to your local paper, whether it's here in Lee's Summit or in Raytown or nearby. Another thing too is, I know sometimes political conversations can be hard to have with those nearest and dearest to us, but I would challenge all of you to talk to somebody you know about what you attended tonight, about this panel, and it's something that matters to you because you came, and somebody that you talk to, if they care about you, they're going to want to hear about what's important to you, right? And so this issue, if it's important to you, talk to other people about it. I know a third thing I wanted to mention, there are commitment cards, which I want to, Paula, do you have the commitment cards?
The little pieces of paper I've been passing around.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I've been, yes, I've been.
And I know that's a scary word, commitment, right? what am I gonna commit to now? But it's good. I think the purpose of the commitment card is to hold yourself accountable to what your next step and what your action is going to be. This young lady over here, you talked about people who you know that are in the gap. Maybe something on the commitment card that you can write is the next step that you want to take and follow up on. Maybe you want to write a letter to the editor. I think your own commitment and next step of action can look like lots of different things. Paula, would you mind handing those out?
The commitment cards have already been handed out.
Oh, they have been?
Yes, they have.
We've already got them!
Yes, they have.
So
them.
start writing!
They have. If anybody needs a pen, let me
Yeah.
know.
So,
I also have postcards that I haven't.
Okay.
So I don't know if you're gonna talk about those too. I was gonna give those to him on the way out unless
yeah,
you want me to.
I can talk about the postcards.
Okay.
So you all each already have the commitment card. So what I would encourage you to do is just take a second and think about one thing that you're going to commit to doing and write it down.
Does anybody need a pen? Anybody need a pen?
If you need a pen, just raise your hand.
Okay, this is gonna sound really very bright, but are you talking about these cards?
No.
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry.
a sheet of paper,
Okay,
and it's got some questions.
So does anyone have something that they want to share with the group that they are going to commit to doing, or an idea for what you want to do leaving here tonight?
I can't think of any way to get around the legislature except to organize and to put, a bill on the. I think that if the general population was appealed to, and if they got enough information, they might come out of their sleepers and actually get a vote. But then I also think, well, I remember when we voted in cell research, we voted, sensible gun control, and, checks and things like that. All they did when, after the voted in favor of them, when they got back, to the state house, they just signed them away. Or they diluted them, like, the Pumpkindale, bill. They diluted it so much that it's basically back to being ineffective. So I don't know, what does it take to get something, go around it on the election, in the election?
Well, I think it takes more of us, right? And so that's why we've got to leave this room and go talk to people about it tonight. We have to talk about how there are people like Miss England who have, in your work life and in your home life, you have people impacted by this issue. And that legislators like Senator Krause can do something about it. And they can at least not obstruct the pathway, right? And when we talk to our friends, when we talk to our neighbors, and we get them to, one, look at who their senator is, who their state rep is, because a lot of us we don't know who they are. So when we talk to people and when we get more information and we act on it, I think that's when we can really make a difference. And so that's, I know what CCO and what community and faith leaders have been working on since 2013 to do. And it really does take all of us together and more of us who are not in the
My tradition, confessions are good. Start every service with a confession every Sunday. And my confession is this: I hated politics. I grew up during the time of the 60s, and I was incensed with Nixon. I was mad as hell what they did to Jimmy Carter, and after that I was depressed. And so for a lot of years I was disengaged with politics. Now in my sermons and my teachings, I'll go there, because there's now more political book in the world than the Holy Bible, but that's another sermon. My point is this: I met with Senator Krause last year. Matter of fact, it was Holy Week, I'll never forget that. And it was just happen chance I showed up. They said, "You want to show up?" Yeah, sure. It's a church of a decent different denomination, but we work together. And so I just showed up, and they sat me next to Senator Kraus. And I told myself before, I said, I'm not going to say a word. I'm just going to sit there and listen. Well, of course, that didn't happen. But this is what I walked away from. And I wrote him a letter. I said, Senator Kraus, thank you. And I mean this sincerely. Thank you, Senator Kraus, for engaging me once again in the hard, courageous, perseverance work of politics. Which is, of course, the Greek word of how communities were organized. So he engaged me. He drew me in because of his greed, of his ego, and doing sides with it. So that's my confession. I was absent for a long time. So my mantra today is show up. Show up. I don't think you can overstate the civil rights in this country. Nothing would have happened if people didn't show up. Dr. King didn't make that happen. You can go down the whole list of all my heroes from that time. Individually, they didn't make it happen. It was the people that showed up. And that's what we got to do. We got to keep showing up, keep showing up. You want a sermon? Quickly. Gentile woman has a sick daughter. Goes to Jesus, will you heal my daughter? Jesus says, go away, you got time for it. You sound like a 1%er. She didn't go away. She kept counting him and counting him and counting him. Hell hath no fury like a mother with a sick child that's not getting any help. So she let Jesus have. Even the dogs get crumbs from the table. He says, go, your daughter is healed. You have to show up, tell the powers to be the way it's going to be. Just like the Gentile woman did.
Thank you. And showing up, I think you all mentioned that, but it's getting out the vote. And it's not just each of us getting out the vote, but we got to encourage, and that's part of the follow-up to do, is encouraging people to get out the vote, because that's happened so much. And that's why, to a large part, it's where we are, because too many would not get out the vote. So with the panels, like, is there anything else you'd like to mention before we go for a break? Will we call it a night better? Yes.
Good evening. My name is August Taylor. I pastor Tucson Baptist Church, and also I'm working with the Dignity and Economic Justice Coalition. And I have been up and down the road with the veteran way for the past several months, with officer and I. And what we were needing is to and so what we have done early in the year, we targeted 5 senators and representatives, and we sent them emails every day, demanding that something be done for Medicaid expansion. On March 18th, I delivered some 500 letters to Senator Tom Denson. They still maintain that indifference. In fact, when we were there and we shut down the Senate for an hour and a half, when they reconvened, they passed a bill to ensure dairy cows. Now, if that doesn't anger you, I don't know what will. A cow is more important than a human being. I don't see that. On this Saturday, you asked for the Human Dignity and Economic Justice Coalition is planning a walk to draw attention to this problem. And we're going to walk from Kansas City to Jefferson City to make this concern known. There will be a group coming from St. Louis to Jefferson City. We're all going to convene in Jefferson City on May 13th. And what we're asking people to do is coming Saturday, we are going to meet at the Royal Stadium across the street from Royal Stadium at 6 a.m. The media will be there, and the walk will begin at 7 a.m. As many of you as can. I'm not asking you to walk, okay? But if you can be there for the purpose of the media coverage, to let our representatives and senators know we're not sitting still with you. We're going to make things happen. If you could be there, that the numbers would be present. It would be greatly appreciated. And when we walk into Jefferson City on May 13th, you can come down and walk in with us. I believe it will make a major impact in educating people of the state. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for being here, and please hand in your commitment sheets to Paula as you leave. And
Clay, I just want to also mention,
yes, please.
Besides turning in the commitment sheets, feel free to hand them to me or set them on the bench back here if you would like to. Thank you. We also have some handouts to give everybody on your way out if you'd like to take one. And this is an important one. It's the Missouri Budget Project. And this was an independent project. It was a nonprofit public policy to analyze what the budget for the state of Missouri for lots of different economic issues. And they did a budget analysis for Medicaid expansion. And their analysis says, just in brief, that Missouri would save $81 million the first year and then $100 million annually. You can get on their website too and find out how they came to that. It also has some other facts. It's a really important document because I personally experienced, my representative is Ken Wilson, and Artis was there that day, Jane was there that day, Clay was there that day. When he said to me, and he gave me a handout with some statistics saying that we couldn't afford Medicaid in the state of Missouri, it would cost too much. Well, it's simply not true. And this is an independent organization that has the facts that it does not cost. Missouri would save money. So I encourage you to take that and be armed to talk if you ever have a conversation with somebody or a legislator if they have that kind of impression. And then we also have some cards here too to take with you if you'd like to. This is a priest from one of the Catholic churches here someplace in eastern Jackson County. Made these up, I understand. And it just says, have the debate for coverage of 300,000 of our brothers and sisters in Missouri's health care insurance gap now. So you can address this to your senator or representative. That's what it says.
Thank you, Paula. Paula, I didn't introduce Paula Otis is a registered nurse, also works with youth and diabetic issues too. So, thank you all again, and please leave your commitment cards with Paula. Have a good evening.